So today I want to install Oblivion, bought from GOG, with a couple of basic mods. The version on GOG is the Game of the Year Edition Deluxe, which means it includes all the small DLCs, but is only available in English. Now I already installed it in the background and downloaded a few mods, so we can start right in. Just one thing before, if you cannot open 7zip files, you will need 7zip to open them, which I already have installed on my computer. If you don't, I would recommend downloading it, because many mods are packed in that. Now the first thing we want to install is OBSE. We open it and take everything except for the src folder, that's the source for developers, which you probably won't need, and drag it into our Oblivion folder. There we go. The second thing we want to install is Wrye Bash. I would recommend joining the Discord. It's linked on the Nexus page. And downloading the latest VIP build, which I just did here. Because whenever some bug appears, it's probably fixed in a couple of hours, but the version on Nexus isn't updated every time, because it takes some more work. So yeah, this will probably have less bugs than whatever else you can find. I'm using the standalone executable, which is just one folder you drag into Oblivion. No need to run an installer for that. And you also don't need Python installed. Now we can close this again. And one thing before I start Wrye Bash, I go into the bash folder and rename this folder. It contains the localization, and I don't want Wrye Bash to run in my system default language, because that makes it harder to follow any guides. So now when I start it up, it will be in English. Here we go. Now we go into the Installers tab. Make sure it's enabled. Now you can either right-click on top, yeah, go to Files and Open. Then you see the location where the installers are on your hard drive, and you can, for example, just take one of those and move it in here. You can also just grab it and drag it into here, and then you will get this window that asks you if you want to copy or to move, and move it in here. Whatever works better for you. So let's just grab a bunch of those and move them in here. Now let's start with the unofficial Oblivion patch. Installing is as easy as right-clicking and selecting install, but you can configure what you want to install before. So in this example, the unofficial vampire agent and face fix is something that Wrye Bash can also do on its own, so you don't really need this. You can uncheck it. It will only install those two files. Select install, and it might take a moment. While we wait for that, I can just go here and extract the sphere edit right where it is, because that will also take a moment. The mods I picked for this are pretty basic. It's the unofficial Oblivion patch for the DLC and for Shivering Isles as well. It's engine bug fixes, which fixes a lot of additional bugs that, as the name says, are in the engine itself. It's Danified UI, which makes the UI more friendly for computer screens, and a lot of people seem to have trouble installing it correctly. It's one tweak, which allows us to run the game in borderless full screen and also to alt-tab the game. And fast exit, which isn't really needed. It just makes the game exit really fast. Sometimes when you run a lot of mods, it can be a bug that the game crashes on exit. Some other mods also include this, like for example the stutter remover, but since I don't have that here now, I just put it in there because I don't want to crash on exit. Now the first one is installed. If we look here, You can see. Now we'll just take the next one. You can also install several at a time by just selecting 2 and selecting Advanced Installation, install current. Then it will install those 2. It doesn't really matter in which order you install mods here. It will always order them in the position they are here. So if, for example, I would move one tweak now at the bottom, top of that list and install it there, if there was any conflict, it would not install files that conflict with higher ones. So it doesn't really matter in which order you install them as long as you set the order here, right? You can always install one at an earlier position later. Now we install engine bug fixes. As you can see here, it's a DLL file. So if you click install, it will ask if you trust that. If you've downloaded it from the Nexus, you will probably trust that. Nexus shows here safe to use, and sometimes some manually verified files. So you can, in general, be pretty sure that whatever you download from the Nexus will be safe. So you select yes. Same with fast exit. Yes. Now one tweak, as you can see here, it doesn't have the DLL configured. That's because it's usually a Skyrim mod. So we want to go to Package, Unpack to Projects. This will basically extract the zip file. And then you can just go in here, remove the format folder because we don't need that, and rename enbseries into OBSE. Close it again. And now it finds those. So we can install that as well. Yes, trust this. One thing that's missing now is the Unified UI. Some people have some trouble with this because it requires 1 or 2 additional steps, but we'll take it slow. This is the typical package structure of a mod that has options. You most of the time want to select core, and then whatever option you also want. For this is a loading screen replacer, which we don't have. This is a nice feature that removes the quest pop-up. You can install it if you want to. This is a loading level up screen that doesn't allow you to set any points. It's needed for some mods, but you probably won't need that. And this has some font 1 variants. You can check which by double-clicking here and opening this file. It's a transparent PNG, so it looks bad in my editor, but you get the gist of it. I'd probably go with this, Immortal, because it looks nice. So we select this as well. Then we click Install. It will copy the files. But now what we have to do for Danified, we go to Ini Edits, and there will be a bunch of files. And you need now to, here there is those, fonts 2, 3, 4, either large or normal, and select large. Then those changes will be applied to Oblivion ini. There will be a warning here. You can pretty much ignore that. You won't damage your computer by changing fonts, but if you ever remove those fonts by uninstalling Danified, you'd want to revert those changes, because if you try to load fonts that don't exist, the game will crash. And for the font 1, I picked Immortal, so I click on that too. Yes, yes. There we go. Now we have a bunch of mods here. Also, if you start this for the first time, the master's window often is very, very small. So you want to go here and grab it and drag it out. The cursor isn't really visible that you can grab it here, but as you can see, it changes and it's movable. So just try it out. Now we have a pretty unordered mess here. You could move mods around manually, like this. What we're gonna do, we install Loot. There are 2 sorting softwares for Oblivion. One is Boss and one is Loot. They both have pros and cons. Like Loot is still maintained. It has master list that is still updated, and it will try to sort any mod you have. Even if it doesn't know it from its master list, it will try to figure out a good place for it. There have been problems in the past if you have a setup that's very heavy on landscape alterations. There were land tiers and stuff, which Boss was really good at managing, but Boss does barely get any updates anymore. So all mods that have been released in the last year or so are not placed correctly with Boss and require a lot of manual placement. So I would say try it with loot, and only if you run into landscape problems you can try Boss. I don't think we need to restart the computer for loot. Now, loot already selected Oblivion, and you can click here to update the master list. And then you click on here to sort your plugins, and then you click on apply to apply this. And before you do that, you should also make sure that lock load order is not set here, because if you set that and then change anything outside of Wrye Bash, as soon as you go back into Wrye Bash, it will revert all the changes. Now we can close this, and we can also set it now. As you can see here, that's a warning. You don't need it in the future if you can remember this. And we can select pretty much everything here. Well, actually, let's select the green ones too. You will see why in a moment. Now, some of those are underlined. That's because, as you can see down here when I hover over it, contains dirty edits, needs cleaning. The official plugins and some mods are dirty. That means they have records that are not needed or even harmful. There are in general two types of records. One is if a mod deletes something, like for example a rock from the game world. If then another mod tries to access that rock, the game will crash on exit. That's one of those crashes on exit I was talking about. So it's always better to not delete an object, but just disable it and hide it, so it looks as if it isn't there, but it really is there and won't cause the game to behave weirdly. The other kind of record is identical to master. So let's say you take that rock and move it a bit, then decide, oh, I don't want to move that rock, and undo it. The mod will still think that rock was edited, even though all its coordinates and position and stuff is the same as in the base game. So now you have a rock that's marked as edited, but it is not. That's probably not as bad for one rock, but imagine if you touch rocks all over the place and then install a landscape mod that really wants to move these rocks. That would have a lot of conflict, so yeah, there's really no harm in cleaning them. So that's what we do now. We already extracted these for edit. There is, in the newer versions from version 4, one that's called Quick Auto Clean X. It does exactly that. We just check this. Don't show this again for a while. Now we select one of those mods that were underlined, for example the horse armor, and only that. And then OK. It will work for a moment on it. Then it does some cleaning. So you do that now for each file that is marked as dirty here. So next is Aurora. You can read the trips or not. And then you just close it once it says quick clean mode finished. You just close it. And as you can see now here, the underline is gone. I'll just pause the video now while I clean the other ones, because that's really pretty boring. Well, now I'm at the last one, and what I should mention, even if it's tempting to select more so you get over with it quicker, you should only clean one mod at a time, or if it's a mod like a patch, have only the required, like if you have a patch for Knights of the Nine and some unique landscapes parts, only have the parents active, and don't clean several independent mods at once. That can only cause problems. Now we're done. And as you can see here, no more underlines. The next thing we do is build a bashed patch. The bashed patch basically allows more mods to play nicely together. For example, you have an NPC and one mod drops a sword into his bag and one mod renames him, and perhaps another mod gives him different hair. Then you can use those tags. Like here, this has a lot of tags. It's those that tell Wrye Bash what to import, and you can tell Wrye Bash that it should take the inventory with the sword from the one mod and the hairstyle from the other and the name from the third, and you'll have an NPC with a new name, a new hairstyle, and a new sword. While without the bashed patch or a manually made custom patch, there would only be one winner, so you would have either the sword or the hairstyle or the name. Most tags you won't need to bother with, they are imported automatically from loot. Even if you don't sort your load order with loot, as long as you have it installed and updated the master list once, it will pull those tags from there, and some mods like this one also bring their own. So unless you run into any problems, there probably isn't any need to mess with that. To reboot the patch, you right-click on it and select Rebuild Patch. These are some mods that contain no new records. They only change existing ones. And with Wrye Bash, you don't have to have them active. It can fully import them, saving you 2 slots in the load order. There is no downside to doing this, so just click OK. And then basically you can just click Build Patch. You can also do some tweaks, like here, tweaks assorted. Let's just make that a bit larger. Like theme settings. Let's take settings. You can make strength encumbrance. Usually for each point of strength you can carry 5 units of stuff in your inventory. You could just do that to 10. Or arrow recovery. Usually you have a 50% chance of recovering a shot arrow that hit an actor. You can set that to 100, so if you hit an actor with 5 arrows, you can pick all of those arrows up again. Or the camera, like there is here a chase camera mod that makes the camera movement a bit nicer, not so laggy, in case you get motion sick with a third-person camera. There are a lot of more settings. You can just, look at them. But for now, we'll just go with those and click Build Patch. This might take a moment, but it's worth it. What's worth mentioning when you change something about your load order now? Let's say it's working so far, and then you install a few more mods. Every time you change anything about your load order, if you add something, if you remove something, or if you just move stuff around, you want to rebuild your bashed patch. So it always has the most current load order to work with. As you can see, I paused the video again because that took a while. After the patch is done building, it will show you this window, which tells you everything that was configured in it. If you have a lot of mods, this can get quite long, but usually you can just click OK. Then it will ask you if you want to activate it. Of course we do. So now I would say it's time to check the game if it works. You have at the bottom here a few buttons like Launch Oblivion, Launch the CS, Launch with OBSE. If you have that here checked, you will launch the game with OBSE. That's an easy way to just, uncheck it if for some reason you don't want to, but usually you would leave it checked. You can also here enable auto quit, so as soon as you launch the game, Wrye Bash will close itself to save some memory. I mostly don't, because I don't think that bit of memory is going to save me. One thing I almost forgot, since I'm using the GOG version, we need the latest loader, which we just download, open, and then copy this one into the Oblivion folder and overwrite the one you installed earlier. It's because that version was released later than the latest OBSE version, and they had to make sure it works with the game. So now we click on Launch Oblivion, which is a bit loud. You can already see here I have the new font I installed. And if I click on New Game, you have a different font in the loading screen as well. An intro video I don't need here. And a very creative name. This is the quest window that the other option would have removed. And as you can see here, the interface is a bit more condensed. You now have all race and skills here and there. I'm in no factions yet. I don't really have anything accomplished. And this one I won't bother with now is to move around your interface. But unfortunately, without additional mods, changes you do here will not stick if you close the game. So far it seems working, so now we just save, just in case. And then there's one more thing I want to install, which is an enb. I think I actually accidentally moved the enb into the Bash installers folder earlier. Yes, I did. But you cannot install enbs with Wrye Bash. enbs and OBSE itself are the only tools you cannot install with Wrye Bash. It's not hard though. There is the enbseries DLL. You would download that from the enb dev website. And all you need is the v3, v9 DLL, which you just move here. And then what I picked was simple enb because, well, I like its look. You grab all the other files from there and move them in here as well. If you want to customize hotkeys, you can open the ini file. Like here, change some keys around. Use effect, FPS limit. But I won't bother with that now. So as you can see in the upper left corner, there is the enb running. And when I run the game and load a save now, I have a pretty good depth of field, but this is how it looks without, this is how it looks with it. Now if we go somewhere in the overworld, make the weather nice. This is how it looks with and without. As you can see, the glow of the sky is gone and there's some anti-aliasing going on, and everything else is pretty similar. You can press Shift-Enter to open this menu. I always find it easier to actually edit stuff here if I open the console as well, even if it looks weird, because then I won't move around when I do that. It's not this mouse cursor, but that one, which is a bit irritating. And one thing I'll disable is depth of field. Bloom is nice, adaption is nice. Not much difference here probably. Detailed shadow I find nice. And then press Shift Enter again. and close the console again. Or perhaps without that one, as it sometimes looks a bit weird on grass. And now to check some interior. Some stuff is pretty glowy without it, especially sometimes faces. I'm not sure if that's a good location to test.
What exactly do you require of me?
But as you can see, with it on, the rugged edges around his face disappear, and he's not quite as glowy as before. So that's pretty much it. We've installed Oblivion, we've installed Danified UI, the unofficial Oblivion patches, some DLCs patches. We installed some DLL mods, and I have no idea why it thinks these are missing. Probably still a bug, but as it was working. Might have to investigate, but it's working, so that's the most important part. In general here, if you see everything in green, that's great. If, for example, you see it in orange, it means that it is loaded before its master. You can see what it means down here. So it says here loaded before its master, so you might want to swap those around. If it was red, that's a real problem, because that would mean its master is missing, and a missing master will make your game crash if you try to launch it anyway. Unless it's a filter mod that is not active. A missing master is only then a problem if you have a checkmark here. Try to activate it, then it will make the game crash. Similarly here, green means everything is just installed as it is in the file. Yellow means one file is no longer matching, which in this case means once we've run it, the mod did some changes to its ini file, that's no problem. Red means some of the files are missing. No idea why those are missing. Probably a bug in the current Wrye Bash. You could do a quick refresh, then it would check and see, oh, they are not actually missing. And gray means that some files are skipped. In this case, because of the directory they are in the root directory, so they got skipped. In this case, skipped because of directory, also because they are in weird directories. That's why we extracted it, so it would match. If you ever encounter something that's just gray here, that means that Wrye Bash cannot detect the file structure at all. It's become quite good at recognizing what should be put where, but once in a while you might come across some very old mod that's strangely packed, and then you must do what I did before with one tweak. You'd have to unpack it. You can unpack it here by unpack to project, and then just mess around with the files until they are in a structure that's easy to recognize. For example here, it's always good if it's a simple package that it looks as if you were inside the data folder, like you have meshes, textures, and the things itself. Or you could also have the data folder itself, and then when you enter that, have that. It's a bad idea, as I said, to have directories that are not standard, like meshes, textures, sounds, ini. Those are standard directories. If you have, for example, something called configuration, Wrye Bash might not recognize it, and you'd have to click here and select has extra directories. Then it will install everything, as you can see here, that is not in a standard directory. I'm not sure which mods use that, but if you ever find something that is skipped in a directory you would want to install, you'd want to select this. Alright, that's it for today. Good luck and have fun playing.